theoretically, it's great to hear about what our potential is, but it's not until we actually set those thoughts, those intentions into action that we really recognize what can truly happen, what can take place. And it's so much fun. It's so much fun to just push up your sleeves and recognize that we're part of a huge community of people that all want to take action.
My name is Zenka, and this week we have a very special guest in the Purpose Lab. This woman's heart is so big, her kindness literally wraps around the world to all sorts of people of all nations, all colors, all economic status, and all purposes. She is making big change, and we're excited to tell her story here. I would be talking about none other than Laura Rose.
I started working in cultural exchange, and that was magic for me. And I suddenly realized that all my focus on me was changing to the we, to the collective we. And I started working with international students from all over the world. And that was such an extraordinary experience because I was facilitating their experiences. So now it's been about 170,000 people from 85 countries around the world. And I have had the privilege of meeting so many magical, passionate young people that are extraordinarily gifted and opening their arms to understanding other cultures, to learning about their potential. And that's led into all of the work that I do now, which is mentoring young women and girls from all over the planet. I work with right now about a half a dozen young women, mostly in Africa, the Caribbean, Asia. And, when I say mentoring, I feel like I'm learning more from them than they learn from me, but it's sort of a give and take. Mm-hmm. And I serve on several boards that are dedicated to eradicating modern day slavery, to giving voice to young women, to helping to choose love on the planet. And all of those things sort of tie in together with the beautiful work that Emanuel and I are doing with the Holo movement and with Purpose Earth as well. Purpose Earth gives me purpose every day. And it's this extraordinary little team of people, and we all met during the pandemic. I didn't even meet some of them in person until a couple of months ago, actually. But we worked remotely, and what a gift, the internet is, right? And all of the things we can do and connect planetarily is extraordinary. So here we are with Purpose Earth, and we decided to set up a little not-for-profit that is bringing together grassroots organizations and people and projects that are all over the planet that are finding solutions to their own community's challenges. And that means building schools in the Dominican Republic for children who didn't have a mom or a dad at home to take care of them when they're 4 years old and were kind of running around barefoot and maybe only eating rice once a day. We're now providing 2 square meals a day. Their kids are learning their colors, their shapes, because they don't go to school until they're about 7. So, there's a long time there where they need love and care and an opportunity to learn. We're also setting up training schools in Nepal and Africa to teach women a marketable skill to prevent forced marriage, to prevent modern day slavery. We're working with a lot of environmental sustainability programs. So we meet these organizations, they submit an application to us, and we have this amazing group of selection council members that read through all of the applications. And then, the hardest part is narrowing it down to the handful that we're able to actually give support to. But then that relationship goes on for a long time. And it means mentoring, interaction, ongoing support, in many cases ongoing funding. So it brings huge joy. And then that's now become part of the Holo movement as well. So the Holo movement is my husband's dream, Emanuel Kuntzelman. And, he was my first mentor. And I met him a long time ago on a bus on the way to the pyramids of Teotihuacan. And he started talking to me about quantum physics, which I knew nothing about. And I was kind of in this desperate state of trying to figure out my life. And all of a sudden, hearing about Bell's theorem, I just went, wow, that's incredible. And I felt this extraordinary connection with him, with the universe, that I finally understood. And so that led us today to the Holo movement, which is bringing together through the implicate and the explicate, which is what David Bohm talks about, who's a brilliant American physicist and a contemporary of Einstein's, with whom he worked once upon a time. And it's about bringing us together as one whole movement of movements that can unite all of the beautiful work that's being done on the planet and connect it in a way that gives meaning and sense, not just to the people who are carrying the work out, but all of the people on the planet who are looking for some place to put their faith. I think what's brought me the most joy through all of my work with Purpose Earth, with Greenheart and cultural exchange, and now with the Holo movement, is action. You know, we've spent so much of our lives listening to people talk about, theoretically, it's great to hear about what our potential is, but it's not until we actually set those thoughts, those intentions into action that we really recognize what can truly happen, what can take place. And it's so much fun. It's so much fun to just push up your sleeves and recognize that we're part of a huge community of people that all want to take action. And that by linking all of them together and recognizing that it's not about saying that, there's somebody who's underprivileged or deserves something better and therefore, I'm going to step in with my S-cape on and save the day. That's not it. I mean, what I see is that we are part of something where we are now recognizing that everywhere on the planet there are brilliant people who are coming up with solutions, who are taking action, and all they need is support. All they need is to be heard. So that's where I think there's that thread that connects all of this together. It happened with cultural exchange, with getting to know young people who, by the way, when I think about it, the families who hosted a lot of these exchange students honestly got more, or at least as much, benefit from the experience as the young people that they were hosting. And that includes Americans, French families from all over the world who think, I'm opening myself to cultural exchange so that I can teach these people about the right way to live. But so often, when you get together with these people afterwards, they say, my whole world has just been lit up by meeting a young girl from Kazakhstan who was so passionate about volunteering that now we're all volunteering. So, traveling opens people to their purpose, to their calling. Moving out of your comfort zone is the number one thing that every one of us can do to have a deeper connection with the world around us, because we have so many more likenesses than differences. Now, one of the projects that we support with Purpose Earth is called Ghazala Weaving, and it's so relevant right now with the tension in the Middle East. And it's bringing together Bedouin Muslim women with Israeli women, and they are creating these extraordinarily beautiful textiles. They're working in community, even with the most recent horrific, devastating debacle that's occurring right now in the Middle East. They are joined heart to heart, hip to hip, elbow to elbow, and they're doing this beautiful work together, and they're encouraging their community in southern Israel to lay down their arms, for everybody to lay down their differences and their anger, to let it go. And they're doing it and reviving a 1,000-year-old weaving tradition. There was a time where I really had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. And, I had done volunteering as a young woman, and in high school I had volunteered, and I loved it, but I knew that I didn't want to work at a hospital, even though that's what I was doing. And then, life happened, getting through college, trying to make a living, all of those things. And I was broke. So I started working in jobs that I was good at, and they paid the bills. I had little trophies on my desk, but I felt no fulfillment. And when I was 26, I woke up and I cried. And I cried because I thought I was so old, so over the hill. And I thought by then I was going to know exactly what I wanted to do with my life. And I cried because I had no idea. But I started thinking back on a dream that I had as a girl. When I was about 10 years old, I had a dream that I lived in this beautiful cottage, this incredibly beautiful cottage. And it was sort of like, it had a fireplace and it had some half timbering and it was set in a beautiful forest and there were trees and butterflies and flowers everywhere. And one day this knock came on the door and it was this boom, boom, boom. And I was trembling in the dream. And I went to open the door and there was a spirit being there. And the spirit invited me to join it on this sort of magic carpet, this invisible magic carpet. And I knew that I had to go. So I got behind it and I put my arms around him and we took off and we looked down and the house became smaller and smaller and smaller. And I held tighter and tighter as we flew over beautiful scenes of forests and flowers and until the landscape began to change. And I realized that I was over devastation, probably World War II Germany. And I began to cry. And the spirit being said to me, you will have a choice in your life to stay in your beautiful cottage or to go out into the world and make a difference. And I remember waking that morning, and the only thing I really remember thinking was that I had to hold on to that dream and remember it, but I had forgotten it for a long time. So when I turned 26, that was one of the moments where I had that recollection of saying, I'm focusing too much on me. I'm focusing too much on how is Laura going to be happy? How can Laura succeed? How can Laura pay the bills? And that's when I put out a prayer to the universe and I discovered cultural exchange shortly after that. And a friend of a friend introduced me to an industry I didn't know. I went to inner city schools. I wasn't introduced to cultural exchange. And suddenly I found myself in this industry that I thought, this is beautiful. I'm bringing people together. I'm making them happy. It's crazy busy. It's incredibly challenging. But I lost my sense of worrying about self. And suddenly I was much more concerned about others. And it was hugely impactful. And I started praying. I started praying when I took up yoga. And yoga was the path that led me to many very deep spiritual experiences. And I always found that it was toward the end of my yoga session. And I always have done it on my own. I've taken a few classes here and there, but mostly it's on my living room carpet or wherever I am. And I go deep. So the deeper I stretch and the deeper I find that I'm going into a state of meditation, the more I become open to, I think, what I would call the messages of the universe that are being shared with me. And the day that I was 26, I did my yoga practice, as most mornings I do. And I put out a prayer, and I guess it's a prayer. It's almost like talking with my higher self in a way. It's sort of like knowing that the highest part of me is connected with the highest part of everything, and that the only thing that impedes our being able to connect with the messages of the universe are our own, the voice that never shuts down in our minds until we quiet it. And So I just put out, please guide me, as I do now frequently. But I put out, please guide me, show me a sign, bring me somebody in my life that will make a difference. I knew that this was my calling because this is a friend that I met in a very sort of serendipitous way. And I couldn't quite figure out why we were friends in a way, because there wasn't that deep of a connection with us. But I kept, encountering this person again and again and thinking, interesting, I wonder why that is. And then one day I saw her and she said, by the way, I know you have a background in sales and travel and all of these different things. And I know a man who is in cultural exchange and he's looking for a director of his company. And it seems like you would have really great experience for that. And I thought cultural exchange, I don't even really know what that is. It sounds really nice, but okay. And when I met him, I walked into this funky little office on Fillmore Street in San Francisco where I was living. And it was all dusty and kind of dank, and there was this box of files in the back room. And it looked, and he showed it to me and he said, I'm looking for somebody who is ready to just take on bringing together these students from all over the world, identifying coordinators who can place them. And I looked at this box of files and I thought, that box is kind of a magic box. And if I open it, I can wave my little wand and make some magic happen. And essentially that man hired me with great faith. I mean, I really didn't know what I was doing. But he gave me an opportunity. And I knew that that was what I had been praying for when I was 26. So that was a couple of years later. But I was watching and I was meeting people along the way. And when I met him, it was just like a light bulb went off. And I never looked back. And that actually is what brought me to meeting my husband, because it turned out he was in the same industry. And then lots more magic happened. I had so many struggles. I had a huge number of struggles. Most of them were self-imposed, and most of them were about self-doubt. I'm from a family with a lot of mental illness. I've never personally, gratefully, experienced mental illness in the way that some of my family on both sides have. But at times that haunted me, that, there were, just knowing that people in my life, my immediate family, my extended family, had suffered so much with. My grandfather was an Italian immigrant whose dying words were, "If only I hadn't been born Italian." And I know he carried so much pain from his history. And I chose to be really proud of that. I thought it was wonderful to be Italian. But of course I didn't deal with the stigmatisms that he did at the early 20th century, arriving in the U.S. with nothing except the clothes on his back. But what I recognized is that through all of this self-doubt, and a lot of it was just saying, can I really be successful? I kept being asked to step up. I kept being asked by other people to step up, to step into directors' roles, to step into keynote addresses, to step into being a moderator on a panel. And I had so much fear in my early years. I would spend days working on a presentation, and my husband would laugh at me and say, "Oh, just wing it, it'll all be fine." And eventually that was true. I could wing it. But there were a lot of years that I had to rise above that. And I think what has helped me more than anything is my practice of my morning practice. I was introduced to something very beautiful that was created by Michael Murphy. It's called Integral Transformative Practice, and it's a beautiful practice that I started doing when I learned of it many years ago now. And it involves motion. There's a lot of aikido and water wheel motions and beautiful expressions, physical expressions. It involves affirmation. It involves meditation. And then I've sort of adapted it to my own thing, if you will. And a lot of it includes, now for me, my practice includes spiritual. I listen to spiritual leaders. I'm very, very moved by Paramahansa Yogananda. He's had some very interesting places in my life, popping up at unusual times. And then dreams. Dreams have been hugely. I've had so many prophetic dreams over the years, which has helped me to recognize that time is only linear because that's the way that we need to understand it. But as a little girl, one of my earliest memories is being in a garden filled with butterflies. This wasn't a dream. This was just being in the backyard of the house where I lived and looking at things and suddenly having this strong recognition that if I could just lift the membrane or the curtain that was between me and true reality, that everything would be fine. And that there was this beautiful light and beautiful energy that was there. And it was just like, if I could just reach my hand through it, I knew it was there. And then curiously, many years later, I was at an IONS, an Institute of Noetic Sciences conference, and Cassie Veaton, who's a brilliant PhD, was giving a lecture. And she showed an image. It was an image of it was from a medieval painting. And it showed a man in sort of, the elfin shoes that they wore in the Renaissance. And he was in the little turreted castles with the little flags on them. And then there were stars and things behind him. And he was lifting like a curtain. And it was exactly what my dream, but it wasn't a dream, my experience as a little girl was. And I remember catching my breath on this talk and thinking, that's it. And I'm not the only one who's thought this. It's being experienced by all of these people right now. And somebody originally painted that and knew it then, 600 years ago or whatever that was. I believe we're all born with our potential path laid out, and that I believe that we choose it before we're born. That in the Bardo plane, or whatever you want to call it, there's so many terms for it, but I believe that between lives, that we choose who we need to meet, where we need to go, what we need to accomplish to go to the next step in our evolutionary path, which I believe is centuries, millennia long. And I also believe that it's not just about predestiny. We all have choice. We are all able to, and gifted, to find those signposts along the way and to recognize them. And part of our responsibility as a human being on this planet, especially if we're privileged enough to know where our next meal is coming from, to know that we have a roof over our heads, to know that we have access to medical care. Those people who are truly privileged, which is not nearly enough people on the planet, that it is our responsibility to identify that, to go into the silence, to do whatever that takes. I think it can be recording your dreams. It can be silent retreats, which are hugely, hugely beneficial. Listening to nature. I think nature provides so many clues. I have this extraordinary connection with some of the animals that are here. And Emanuel calls me a javelina whisperer because we have these beautiful, they're not pigs, they're peccaries. They're part of the hippopotamus family. But I have this extraordinary sort of relationship with them. And I feel that, they move in a herd just like an elephant does, just like elephants do. And they have the same paths. They move on the same paths again and again. And I think, the animal kingdom is here to give us messages about finding our path, finding our herd, connecting with nature and the universe itself in such a way that we are, we're not separate from it, but we just recognize that we're a part of it. When I'm at my best, when I really am at my best, and that means the days where I give myself to the universe. I stop trying to control outcomes, and I just throw myself into whatever the moment is. What I see is that there's an attractor. There's an attractor within each of us that draws other people to us. When we are at our fullest expression of our potential, because it's like shining a light, right? We live in so much darkness. We live reading headlines of tragic incidents all over the planet. We live with so much fear. And I think there's it's that holotropic attractor that brings us all together, that I see in young women, for example, who, after I did a blog not long ago for a girls' empowerment platform, that I had several young women reach out to me and say, I just want to talk. Can we just talk? And, even though it's by Zoom and they're in Brazil and I'm in the US, and I think what happens is that there's a magnetic force that draws people in to positivity, and that we look for light. We're all desperate for answers. We're all seeking. And the more that we can provide, I think, a core strength within ourselves, to ourselves as a gift, the more we can give that to other people. To find one's calling, we put a huge amount of pressure on ourselves, right? There's this feeling that we have to do, Mother Teresa's very used quote, but it's so brilliant, is that not all of us can do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. And I think that's such a great reminder. The first time I read that, I thought, that's it. That's really it, is that it's the small things that add up to making us feel that we're living our purpose. And my dear, beautiful friend Laura Pena, who's the founder of She is the Universe, a Dominican woman who's just brilliant. And she tells the girls that we work with, if you want to find your purpose, find what makes you cry. And I think that's true. I really think that what makes you cry, and I'm not crying now, I'm just, but I just think that what will bring us a sense of purpose is when we relax, and when we think about, when we give, pour our hearts into just considering, what is it that makes me cry? What is it that makes me want to make a difference? And honestly, in every community, in every state, every country on the planet, there is so much need. And it's the really little things. I mean, a few years ago when I was living in Chicago, there was a food bank near us, and I went in one day to drop off some food, and there was the woman who was running the place asked me if I knew anybody who spoke Spanish because they needed some help with translating. And I said, well, I'm fairly fluent in Spanish, so I started just doing translations for this food in. And it's little things like that, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be huge. Just bringing soup cans to a soup kitchen can make you feel great. And the gift of giving gives back so much more than the actual act of giving. Yeah. It's very much, it's that circular economy. And that's one of the things we support so greatly at Purpose Earth is the circular economy. And it's not just, giving something. It's what can I do to become integrated into a community where there's a give and take and where there's reciprocity. We're finding ourselves, we are in an extremely challenging time. There's no question about that. But it's only in the face of challenge. Evolution has proven that it is only when our species is challenged and when other species are challenged that we have the opportunity to make the significant paradigm changes that can change the world as we know it. And I truly believe that we are on an evolutionary path that has not ended. I mean, for those of us who aren't creationists, and I'm a creationist of a different sort, but I believe that we've gone through an evolutionary path over millions and millions of years. And if Homo erectus was part of it and Homo sapien is now where we're at, what's to say that that's the last step? Why would that even be the case? Why would we even think that's the case? And, maybe it's Homo omega. Whatever it's called, it doesn't really matter. But the point is that we are so brilliant. And the only thing that's standing between ourselves and what our true potential is our own inability to believe in what's possible. And I truly believe that we are on the threshold of being extraordinary and bringing the extraordinariness that we have within each of us to a culminating point where we evolve beyond the strife and the suffering into a place of light and love and understanding.